Okay.
Welcome everyone to our launching event of our new endeavor, our new journey on this conscious health podcast that we are creating, Natasha, Rocha, and myself. We decided that we needed to join forces in order to start this project and start doing this merging of science and spirituality because I think we are approaching a new era of information that we need to start helping each other, and we need to start talking about these topics and try to join forces between what happens in the spiritual side and what happens in science, and trying to understand both sides of the story. So this is the whole point of this platform. So we are going to have a lot of events, workshops, and things that we are going to design together. We will let you know about our website, which is going to be created in Substack. And for today, we are going to discuss in our second episode, because the first one is our lives and our journeys. In this episode, we are going to talk about the mind, the spirit, and the body together, and how to create this balance. So, what do you think, Natasha, about this project, and what do you think about this connection that we have?
Absolutely. And I'm so excited to be live. It's been quite a while since I've been on this platform. So I'm excited to share this great news of launching this conscious health podcast. And it actually came a few years ago where I met David at in Houston for a Hay House event. And we ended up talking in the cafeteria, and David comes from very much a science background, and I, most of you know me, come from more of a spiritual background. And it was quite interesting because we ended up talking quite a bit around health, me coming at it from a spiritual angle, and, David from a scientific aspect. And since then, I've hopefully become a little bit more sciencey, and David's become a little bit more into the spiritual and energetic side, which has been quite interesting. But I've also, working within the Akashic Records, I've also been given a lot of insight into a timeline where our health is going to be looked at from a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. And no longer are we going to go and see only a GP, but who looks after, the body, but we're going to be looking at practitioners that will look at our health from a completely holistic, wholesome way. And that excited me quite a bit. And, when David said, hey, we should do a podcast together because he has his own podcast, I was like, oh, I don't know how that works. And then things started to unfold. But in a lot of the somatic work that I do, there is a lot of a belief that, and I've seen this time and time again, that when an illness presents itself within the body, it's already gone through a protocol of our belief systems, our thought processes, our emotions, and the actions based on those belief systems, the thought processes, and our emotions. And we end up finding ourselves in this space, whether, of unwellness, and wondering how did we get there. And the body is an incredible machine in the sense that it keeps the score. It tells us what's going on, and it's a great indicator because we spend a lot of the time in the 3D. So it's looking at, okay, how is it presenting in the third dimension or in the material side of things? And that's how I tend to look at uncovering the mental, emotional, and spiritual side to something that is presenting itself physically. So throughout the podcast, I'm hoping that we would tackle these different subjects from the various perspectives.
Yeah. Thank you, Natasha. I think that, yes, as you mentioned, this connection that many times we don't understand because it's invisible, as this image is showing, is just trying to make us understand that what the body feels, the mind will interpret many times, and we certainly don't always know what is going on in our bodies because we tend to neglect what we feel. We tend to suppress our emotions because mostly in the Western side of the world, we were taught to suppress them. We were taught to don't even make them space so that we learn how to feel them. And this energy that is coming from our emotions, it will reflect in our bodies, and it will uh, look for an outlet. And many times it will store the energy if we suppress it, or if we just don't allow it to be felt in certain places where probably we had a trauma, or we had an injury, or we certainly will start to develop something in our bodies that is telling us that we are just neglecting some emotions. And that when that happens, then is when you start to pay attention, and then is when you start to take your things seriously, if you are lucky to understand that your body is trying to speak to you. And if you are not, you will wait for more symptoms, and you will wait for the disease to develop and to start creating a chronic condition. So that's what we don't want. We want to understand that the mind, the body have a connection, and they are trying to communicate in their own language. And we also need to understand that this language will give us signs that are very subtle, because many times we don't understand. We just have probably a headache. Probably we just feel that our energy is not in the same level. Probably we feel just in a bad mood, something like that, and we don't pay attention. We just say, well, if I have a headache, I just have to take a pill, and the headache will disappear. So that's the quick fix. Doing that is just suppressing what you are feeling, because probably that headache come after an argument with someone at work, with your couple, with your children, whatever it is. It's telling you something about an emotion that is stored there, and that you needs to find that outlet, and you need to find that way of understanding that it is the best language that your body can give you. No? So what do you think about that?
Absolutely, and I agree. And they're actually called little energy cysts, whether it's something that happens from for example, a physical trauma. Like you fall down, you hurt yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Even that has some sort of a spiritual, subconscious meaning behind it, which is important. And we tend to look at, from a cranial perspective, those traumas that we've experienced emotionally create kind of like a little energy cyst, a little energy ball that almost becomes like a pebble within our fascia. And it's amazing how we tend to find the memory that's stored in there. And I've had some incredible experiences with, for example, craniosacral therapy. So, for example, I broke my finger playing softball once at part of corporate challenge, for example. And when I was doing my cranial training, which was great because there's a lot of theory and there's a lot of hands-on, this body did this kind of like this unwinding aspect. And I didn't realize in that until my arm actually started to move in the way that it was hit. It actually created the same motion of that ball kind of like really hitting into the glove, before it dropped. And it was so interesting because I've had quite a few experiences like that, even kind of like going to, the dentist, or going to the, chiropractor after being at a dentist, where I've had kind of like an injection that kind of like didn't realize that that was the effect, that, kind of like my neck was stiff and I couldn't kind of like check to see which way I was driving. And, he just pressed in one area because he was quite intuitive, not that he would ever say that he was intuitive, but he pressed in this area and it automatically brought back the memory of the injection going in and the trauma that that had created and the tension. So the energy must have stopped somewhere, kind of like just kind of like in my occiput somewhere. Then it created a whole bunch of those, like that tension all the way down my neck. So time and time again, I've seen great examples of how the memories of trauma and how we store them. And it's like you say, we get taught to suck it up and move on. And we tend to keep doing that because we've never had the time or been able to step into that space of allowing for that recovery. For example, the other kind of like belief system that has shown up is kind of like, oh, depression is only for rich people because poor people still need to get up the next day and go and get to work, kind of a thing. So, there's so many belief systems that we carry where we just suppress all of these emotions, whether it be, home or business or whatever it is, that it tends to show up later on in life, kind of like in the body. But it's really about uncovering what it is that we've stored, because certain organs, depending on their function, tends to also relate to what is happening in our lives. So, for example, like our bones are, very much connected to or that I found, the foundations of life, and our joints being the ability to adapt to what life throws us. And sometimes we're not flexible. And sometimes we're too flexible, and they both, show up later on as, I suppose, a dis-ease or a discomfort that comes up later on. And it's quite interesting that we can look at certain body types and tell what is happening on perhaps a mental, emotional. And it's a generalization a lot of the times until you start unpacking this with our clients. So, for example, arthritis, to people that are more prone to arthritis tend to be, which I find, perfectionists or not really agile and adapt to certain things because things have to happen a certain way for them, what causes that tension or that stress. Or I find that sometimes when we store anger in our liver, unresolved anger. And although everybody is unique, and I mean, Eastern medicine have been talking about this for thousands of years. It's not like we're reinventing anything, but I feel that there is an opportunity to mix both sciences, and there's a place in the world for Eastern and Western natural medicines and, scientific medicines to really merge and support each other.
Yes. Yes, I agree that many times we tend to look for those quick fixes, and we really don't have time many occasions to reflect about what is really happening in our lives, and we tend to move on and just keep working, keep being in this hamster wheel, and being in that loop of not having time to reflect, not having time for ourselves, will just make the problem bigger, and will just tell your body that it needs to find a place to store that problem, that issue, that emotion, that conflict that you have. And doing that is what will create this sequence of events that will develop in this chronic thing. Besides, we already know also that the heart has a big electromagnetic field that is communicating with us, and not just with us, because as we can see in this image, the heart has a wide range of influence in terms of how we feel, and we pass that energy to people that is around us, and we also don't see that, because many times when we are not in the mood, when we are in a conflict, when we have stored emotions, we tend to take it out on the people we love. And that's very, very common, either in with our couples, either with our children. And that is going to create a circle of also creating a toxic environment. This is not just you now. Now you are affecting other people that is around you because of this energetic field that you have in your heart, and because your heart will try to communicate the way you are feeling to other people if you are not saying anything, just in terms of the energy that you are spreading to them. So if we start understanding that, one simple solution to ground yourself is having contact with nature, because the earth electromagnetic field will allow us to be grounded, to have like a sort of a button, of a reset button, that will make us feel more tranquil and more at peace, and that will allow us to be in a much better place to communicate with our people, and to make them understand that we had a bad day and that was it. But if we, let's say that I had a bad day at work, and I arrived to my home right before I came from work, and I have this negative energy that I accumulated throughout the day. So the first people that I will see will pay the price. If instead of that, I notice that I am not feeling well, and before I enter into my house, I take a short walk of 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and I try to contact with nature, with trees, with something that makes me feel at peace, or I just close my eyes and be in silence, and I just put some music that allows me to take my mind off. That will help not just me, but it will reduce the stress, and it will create an emotional balance that will make me more aware of how I'm feeling, and how can I impact better in my house with my partner or with my children. So if we learn to do that, which is just very, very simple, is having 5 minutes for you to push that button of reset, and that's it. No.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've started noticing that a lot more doctors are looking at the mental emotional side of their patients. I have a daughter that's going through treatments, and it's been quite maybe 4 years that we've been going, 4 or 5 years that we've going through this. And I love the fact that they've looked at the emotional aspect of the treatment as well. Do you think that's starting to become more common in, Western medicine, starting to look at the mental emotional aspect of patients? Or do you think it's still very much the aspect of take this pill and we'll sort it out? Or do you see a traction of looking at the mental, emotional, and spiritual side of things from your perspective? I mean, you teach as well.
Yes. No, sadly, what I see is that we are still stuck in that model of just trying to prescribe, trying to just listen to the symptoms and just resolve that situation with a pill or with a treatment. That is what I see mostly, because people don't have time. That's the excuse for many practitioners of medicine. And what I'm seeing in the education model is that it comes from there. The root cause is that teaching physicians in school make them make them learn things by memory and make them learn diagnosis by memory, and just learning the names of the multiple drugs that they have available. So that's not a model that will start to unravel the problem that we have. This is a model that is going to replicate more the situation. So just what I've seen is that people in general, more people are waking up, and more people are more responsible to look for an alternative solution. That's what I'm seeing. But the model, the medical model, is not changing yet. It has to, I think it has to come a difficult event so that they understand that the model that they are applying is not working already.
Yeah, I've actually started meeting a lot more nurses that have been working on, so for example, they've come back to working with Reiki, as well as, doing being at the hospital. And I do know that in Calgary, they're like, we're not promoting it, but if a patient would like a Reiki treatment, there's not going to stop it. So I've seen two sides of things. I've already started to see it shift very slightly in looking at the emotional aspect of things. But I've also seen the side that you've been describing, where it really is about supporting the illness rather than the wellness. And it's more about I come from a belief system of prevention is better than the cure. And we're not in that space of prevention in looking at nutrition and all sorts of things. And I think that it's great that people are actually starting to take a lot more responsibility for their health and starting to do quite a bit of research and starting to push back a little bit, in the sense of saying, you see the information that, you're giving me is not good enough. Are there any alternatives that can support me, whether it's through nutrition, whether it's through holistic measures as well? So I have started seeing, and I don't know if that's just because that's the paradigm that I tend to live in, but it has started to surface in that sense. And I've also, at the same time, have had to advocate for pushing for alternative solutions as well, which is quite interesting, because in one of the things that came up with my daughter, because she's going through kind of like big treatments every month, it started to affect her liver, and they were like, oh, it's okay, it's not in the thousands yet. We have patients in the thousands. And I was like, oh, I don't care. I was like, what are we going to wait? Like, we know that it's not moving in the right direction. We need an alternative now. And it's like, we need to sort it out now, because they had been monitoring her liver function every month. And it was very interesting in that. And that's why I started to realize we've all become so kind of like, it's just, this is what the doctor's saying, this is what it is. And I think with the internet and with people doing a lot more research, we've started to kind of like go, okay, wait a minute, let's look at, is there another solution? Which is great, because it actually pushes us all to be, or pulls us all to look at health from a different perspective, look at all the options instead of the one option that is being presented to us. And yeah, I think it's changing, and I'm excited about how it's going to change in the sense of looking at things from very much a nutritional perspective as well, which is important because we're becoming many of us are becoming very much aware in the food that we put in our body, and how it supports our health and our vibrational frequencies as well.
Yes, what you mentioned, I also see that nurses and people that are in the front line and they are having more contact with the patient, because when physicians have contact with patients, I think they have a problem with the ego.
Mm.
Because many physicians, they tend to be upgraded in this education system also, so
Mhm.
that they believe that they know everything about the body, and I think they don't even know the body. They know, as I mentioned, they know how to prescribe, they know the diseases, they probably know anatomy, but that's not knowing the body. Knowing the body is understanding how it functions and how it integrates the information and how multiple organs are communicating and they have a close relationship between them, and what affects one organ will affect the other one in at certain point. And as you mentioned with your daughter and these values of her in the liver in
Mhm.
this biochemical test, and also understanding biochemistry is not something that is being taught in many medical systems, because they allow physicians to not really understand the biochemistry of the body. And this is extremely important for me, I think, that because this is the language of the body. The language of the body is reactions. The language of the body is also understanding that it has a way of communicating things that are happening inside, and it is always in contact, in communication, in close communication with the multiple tissues, cells, systems, and every single thing that the body is trying to say is important.
Mhm.
So neglecting that dialogue of the body and just taking the information as, well, you have a pain in your head, I will give you a pill for the pain in the head, but not understanding why do you have this pain, that's what makes the difference. Because if I just ask you two or three more questions about your day, about the way you sleep,
Mhm.
about the even if I'm not a therapist, if I just understand that you have problems in your house, I will know that the pain in your head is not because of a body language or
Mhm.
something that is not working in your body. This is something that is just life. It's just life, it's just the stress, it's just the lack of sleep. It just probably you are just hungry and your body tries to tell you that the way you are eating is not the right way,
Mhm.
and is reflecting in the way you are processing food. So all of those things are really important to understand that we are doing something bad in our bodies and we are not really paying attention to what it's telling us. No.
Absolutely. So, absolutely, we'll be discussing a lot of these topics as we move forward and kind of like narrowing down into, the different organs or the different systems or just things that generally tend to come up for us, either with our patients or, clients, and how we move through that. But we definitely start looking at the things from a mental, emotional, physical and spiritual perspective. Absolutely. And I think that is the future of medicine and how it works. And yeah, it's really listening to our bodies and really starting to feel empowered about what's going on and really getting curious. Like you say, what is this headache? Have I drunken enough water? What is going on? Is it,
Yes,
and is
even
it,
water.
yeah, what's going on in our systems? And it's really about becoming curious. And I think we just look at a few topics and we become curious and just really start to lend our knowledge of what we've experienced over the last few years into helping to understand the body from a physical, mental, and emotional perspective and a spiritual perspective, because there's the added layer of not only, what are we putting in our bodies, but we start looking at the intergenerational patterns and conditioning and traumas and belief systems that we also carry within our bodies that we've come to work through and to let go of and to release. So it's very multifaceted, and we are very simple beings, but yet we're multidimensional and can be quite complex as well. And I find the body to be so fascinating because I still feel that we're still discovering a lot about our bodies as well, and really looking at the origins of where did we come from and where are we going. And yeah, it's absolutely fascinating, I think, and I get curious about it, and hopefully we'll be able to bring quite a bit of this information in our podcast.
It's funny that you mentioned about this ancestral lineage and how it affects us many times. And we think, or we tend to think that what happened with our parents didn't affect us, but also this is just the epigenetics of emotions. This is just the epigenetics of what is happening in our lineage and 7 generations back. Of course, that you are not going to know what happened 7 generations in your life, but you can know at least what happened with your parents and your grandparents. So that's 2 generations. And many times the information that you take out from an interview with your mother or with your father, it's enough to tell you the patterns that you are repeating, the patterns that you created, and the environment and the emotions and all of those things that you are just trying to understand. Where do they come from? But you don't understand them because you don't know the story, and not knowing the story will make you repeat the mistakes. As they say, if we don't understand what happened in the story or in history, we tend to repeat the things and we tend to do the same mistakes that our parents did. And that's how we also start a cycle of toxicity. And there needs to be a generation that breaks the pattern. There needs to be a generation that wakes up and says, enough is enough. And, and, and we can do things in a different way. Even if you realize that at your 40s or at your 50s or at your 60s, whatever it is the age, it's good because you will break the pattern and you will allow yourself to have a different mindset of what is happening.
Yeah, and it's needing to update to now, because sometimes the patterns that our ancestors had are no longer relevant because we don't live like they did. But then the knowledge and wisdom that they carry is also quite important to carry through sometimes as well. So there's a lot of information that has been lost in the original ways of living as well. So it's looking at things from all perspectives, which is quite important, I think, in understanding. And really, the journey of life is getting to know ourselves in different capacities, in different ways, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, which makes life quite an adventure and quite exciting as we move forward.
Yes, yes. And that it's recognizing that the work of spirituality, the work that it has, and the work that we need to start understanding that we need many times, and having time. It's important to recognize that time is really important for you. You need to be a priority in your life. It doesn't matter if you start with these 10 minutes where you just journal about how you feel, where you just try to understand these stories and try to assemble your own puzzle. So having those little pieces of time will heal you much more than just staying in that wheel, and staying in that treadmill, and just taking the speed more and more and more, because you are just depleting your energy by doing that. So having contact with your spiritual side, which includes this contact with your ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
will help you to understand your story. And there are many studies that have been performed how this spirituality help us to heal the the body, help us to have faith in what the body knows how to do, which is healing. And there are multiple stories of people that have healed just with the power of belief, which is also reflected in the placebo arm of a clinical study. So there is always, when people start looking for a new drug or for a new uh, medication, there is always a side that should be done, which is this placebo. And these people that are in the placebo arm and they don't receive anything, they just have faith in the product that they don't know that they are not receiving, but they have more faith in their own bodies in those moments. And having that faith either in God or in the universe or in the name that you want to put is doing the work that the body knows how to do. So that what tells us is that our body is already healthy, but we make it sick by not understanding the process of having time to rest, having time to know what are you ingesting, having time to sleep at your time, at your schedules, and also having time to have fun and joy in your life, no?
Absolutely. Aren't our organs constantly regenerating themselves?
Yes, they are. They are, and they are changing, and they are always renovating, and they are always recycling. And so that's the amazing part of the body, no?
So we're physically new people every few years, completely new.
Even every few months, not even years, every few months, we have this renovation of many tissues, cells, and systems that constantly change, and they need to renovate in this. But we don't see it, so we don't understand it. But it's happening. It's happening in the background, and it's happening as we speak, and it's happening uh, every time you um, are grateful with your body, with your energy. No?
Absolutely. So these are the types of topics that David and I will cover in our Conscious Health podcast that will be shared on YouTube weekly. And we
Yes.
hope you'll join us. And like David said, we will soon be running workshops and looking at perhaps even doing sessions together to support you on a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level as well. So absolutely, we'll keep you posted. Join us, share with us, comment with us. We'd love to know your thoughts and continue to, be the best version of you, continue to get curiosity about your body, your mind, and your emotions. And yeah, let's start living our best lives possible.
Thank you, Natasha, for highlighting those points. That is the purpose of this platform that we are creating together. And as you mentioned, we will have these kind of topics throughout the space that we have here. And we also will have guests that will speak about these multiple topics, about wellness, about spirituality, about all of those things. So thank you very much for being here. And we encourage you to leave us comments to help us to know what you think or any suggestions of topics that you want us to touch. So we'll be in touch our next episodes, which are gonna be, by the way, Wednesdays. So
Yes,
today we chose this day because it's a special date, but in the future we will have these sessions on Wednesdays.
absolutely. See you all very soon. And yeah, keep us posted. We're excited for how this continues on. Have an amazing, amazing day, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.